Hey everyone, and welcome back to the PTG Rail Routes Learning series. In this episode, we're going to be taking another look at the Wherry Lines route, which is available from Armstrong Powerhouse, in what I just felt was a logical continuation from my previous train simulator route learning video, which was between London Liverpool Street and Norwich. So in this video, I'm going to be driving between Norwich and Great Yarmouth on the route via Acle, as there's actually two routes towards Great Yarmouth from Norwich, both of which have been modelled in Train Simulator, and the total journey distance of this is around 18 1/3 miles. The train that I'm driving is train 2 Papa 22, following the real-life timetable of the 13:36 Abellio Greater Anglia service from Norwich, and our stops along the way include Brundall Gardens, Brundall, Lingwood, Acle, and finally Great Yarmouth. The train that I'm driving on this journey is a Class 156 Super Sprinter diesel multiple unit. The Class 156 has been in service since 1988 and was manufactured by Metro Camel at Washwood Heath between 1987 and 1989, with the first units entering service in 1988. A total of 114 of these two-coach units have been produced, with a maximum speed of 75 miles per hour and a power output per unit of 570 horsepower. Each unit weighs 35.5 metric tons, and they have a total length of around 75.5 feet per coach. Now in the cab of the unit, let's quickly go through the startup procedure here. You may notice that this unit is quite considerably like the Class 150, which has appeared on this channel many times before. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to move the reversing handle into the neutral position. And as I do that, I notice I get a green AWS Bing sound, but unfortunately there is no AWS self-test sequence. Much like there is also no driver safety device simulated on this unit, as this is quite an old model now, and Armstrong Powerhouse have made a sound pack for it, which I'm using in this video, but unfortunately so far they haven't made any enhancement pack for the Class 156. So now that I've done that, the next thing I'm going to do is turn on the instrument lights with the I key. And now let's go up here and start setting up the train lights. So I need to turn off the tail lights. I want to turn on the destination light. And in addition to that, I also want to turn on the marker light. And now I want to set up the headlights. So that's currently the left headlight. And what I actually want is the right hand headlight, which is the daytime setting. So now the lights are all set up on the unit. The next thing I'm going to do now is to open the window here, just to get the noise of the engine a bit louder in the cab, and also hear the noise of the air rushing past as we get faster. So now that I've done that, we're actually pretty much set up ready for departure away from Norwich. So let's just take a quick look at the controls here, just so that you know what's going on, especially if you've not watched one of my videos before, or you're unfamiliar with this type of train. So just to the bottom, slightly left of the screen there, is the brake handle, which is a standard West Code 3-step brake. We've got the released position there, and now if I increase the braking, we've got step 1, step 2, step 3, which is full service, and then there is of course a fourth step, which is the emergency position, which you wouldn't normally use in service. Now just to the right of the screen, to the left of the speedometer, we've got the brake gauges there. So the needle on the right hand side is the brake cylinder pressure gauge. The harder the brakes are applied, then the higher the needle is pointing, and when that needle is pointing at 0, then the brakes are fully released. Just below that we've got the horn control, which is a two-tone horn controllable with the spacebar and the B key. Now just continuing around the cab here, the final control that I need to mention is of course the throttle control, which has 7 notches of power, and generally when I start the unit moving I will go up to notch 3 immediately just to get us moving, and then once we are moving I'll step up to notches 4 or 5 fairly quickly, and then finally I'll go up to full power, notches 6 and 7, once we're doing between 10 and 15 miles per hour. So now we've had a look around the cab, let's just take another look at the train in Norwich Station before departing and heading out on our journey towards Great Yarmouth. Departing away from Norwich, the starting speed limit here is 25 miles per hour, with around 5 miles to go to our first stop, which is Brundall Gardens. Now that we've reached 25 miles per hour, I've just shut off the power here to allow the train to coast until we're able to accelerate further. The Great Eastern Main Line towards London Liverpool Street now diverges to the right, whilst we head towards the left. And just in front of us there you can see Norwich Crown Point Depot, which is the main depot for trains in the Norwich area. The speed limit is now going up to 60 miles per hour, and as we're doing only just over 20, we lost a bit of speed there due to coasting. I've just been able to go straight up to full power without having to worry about the rear of the train having cleared the speed post, as we're only a 2-coach train, so it certainly doesn't take us very long to pass any given point. The speed limit is now going to remain 60 miles per hour for the rest of the journey into Brundall Gardens. As we approach 60 miles per hour, I'm going to cut the power back to notch 4, which in this unit, if you leave the power in notch 4, will maintain you at a speed of around 58 to 59 miles per hour and will prevent you from being able to exceed 60. The line towards Shearing and Cromer is now diverging to the left. now got a Morpeth board warning for a speed restriction of 20 over 60. So the 20 mile per hour speed restriction is for locomotives and heavier trains, whereas in a unit such as this we can continue at 60 miles per hour, as that is the line speed. It's something to do with a bridge coming up in a moment, though I'm not entirely sure exactly why you have to slow to 20 at this point if you're driving in a locomotive. At the warning board there we had 2 miles to go to our stop, and now we've just passed the 20 over 60 speed zone there, and now we've also re-entered a full 60 speed zone, so it really is just that very short section there. We just passed the overbridge immediately after the speed zone, and at that point we had 1¼ miles to go. As we reach the end of this left-hand curve, I'm then going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast. And then I'm going to apply the brakes for our stop at an underbridge, which will be coming up shortly. So we've just reached the underbridge now. We've made a step 2 brake application to bring our speed off quite nicely. The platform here at Brundall Gardens isn't especially long, so you certainly don't want to be entering it at any great speed. I would say no faster than 20 miles per hour, probably slightly less. And now just reducing the braking as we're slowing down slightly too much. To stop at the 2-car stop sign, which is just coming up on the left, and this should be roughly the correct place to stop. Departing away from Brundall Gardens, the starting speed limit here is 60 miles per hour, with around 1 mile to go to our next stop, which is Brundall. Now going to accelerate up to around 45 miles per hour, and I'm going to shut off the power once we've reached 45, which should be around the area of the next crossing, and at that crossing we've got around ½ mile to go. Just reached the crossing now. I'm now shutting off the power at this point, going just below 45 miles per hour. And now I'm going to apply the brakes for our stop at Brundall once I can see the station ahead. You can now see the platform coming up. I've just made a step 1 brake application for now, as I didn't feel that we needed to be braking any harder than that. Here at Brundall Station, I'm aiming to stop near the end of the platform. So if we stop here, this should be roughly the correct place to stop. Departing away from Brundall, the speed limit here is 60 miles per hour, though it's very quickly dropping down to 15 miles per hour. And we've got around 2¼ miles to go to our next stop, which is Lingwood. Now shutting off the power at just above 15 miles per hour, and we need to be down to 15 by the junction you can see just coming up, where we're going to turn to the left. The line going straight on goes through Breydon and then splits into two, with one of the routes going to Great Yarmouth, so that's the other route to Great Yarmouth that you can take, and the other route going to Lowestoft. Once we've crossed this junction and we're onto the single track in a few seconds time, I can then accelerate to the new line speed, which is once again 60 miles per hour. So we're now accelerating up towards the 60 mile per hour line speed, and along this section we've actually got an uphill gradient of 1 in 100, which will indeed affect our ability to accelerate. In fact, one of the things I've noticed when travelling on this branch via Acle versus the other two routes available on the Wherry Lines to drive is that there's actually more gradients, because Norfolk is known as an incredibly flat area. There's not generally many gradients on the railways around here, but this route seems to have more gradients than the Lowestoft or the Great Yarmouth via Breydon routes. So we just had an AWS warning there with a cross sign next to it, which indicates that we can ignore that AWS warning as it's for the opposite direction. And at this point we've got around 1 mile to go to our stop. At this upcoming distance signal here by the overbridge, we've then got around 3/4 mile to go to our stop. At this point I'm now going to idle the power to allow the train to coast. What I'm looking out for ahead now is a crossing, which marks 1/2 mile to go, and then I'm going to apply the brakes shortly after we've passed over a second crossing. So we've just reached the first crossing now. The second crossing is just coming up, and then I'm going to apply the brakes just a few seconds after that. Here at Lingwood station, I need to aim to stop at the S sign at the end of the platform. And so we should now be stopped in just about the right place. Departing away from Lingwood, the starting speed limit here is 60 miles per hour, with around 2.5 miles to go to our next stop, which is Acle. At this point we're now in fact on a 1 in 130 downward gradient, which could cause us to accelerate a little, so I've just shut off the power now to allow the train to coast, and I will use the brakes if necessary to control our speed. So at the signal there we had 3/4 of a mile to go to an upcoming 50 mile per hour speed restriction, and 1 mile to go to our stop at Acle. So I'm going to apply the brakes to bring our speed down for both the speed limit and our stop, just before we reach the next signal. So I've now made a step 2 brake application to bring our speed down. We're down to 50 in time there, and you can see the station coming up just ahead. Let's bring our speed down quite nicely. I don't really want to enter the platform faster than around 25 miles per hour. In fact, I can now reduce the braking to step 1. I just fully released the brakes there accidentally. And now I'm going to increase the braking as we enter the platform here. Here at Acle, I'm aiming to stop at the S sign that you can see just coming up on the left-hand side. And so this should be about the right place to stop. Departing away from Acle, the speed limit here is 50 miles per hour, though it's very quickly going back up to 60 miles per hour, with just under 8 miles to go to our next and final stop, which is Great Yarmouth. Speed limit's now gone back up to 60 miles per hour. We're now going to be at 60 miles per hour for most of the way through to Great Yarmouth. just had another AWS warning there, cancelled out with the X sign, and at that point we had 6 3/4 miles to go. And now that we've reached 60 miles per hour or thereabouts, I've cut the power back to notch 4 to maintain this speed. This overbridge just coming up here, we've now got around 5 1/3 of a mile to go. So just had quite a long section there on continuously welded rail, and then the jointed track will be restarting soon, and at the point where the jointed track restarts, we've then got 1 1/4 miles to go to an upcoming 50 mile per hour speed restriction. Jointed track has now restarted with 1 1/4 miles to go to the upcoming 50 limit. I'm going to idle the power as I see a signal coming up ahead, and then I'm going to brake for the upcoming 50 as we approach that signal. just see the green dot of the signal coming up in the distance there. So I've just shut off the power now, and as we're now approaching the signal, I'm just making a step 1 brake application to bring our speed down to 50. So I'm now down to 50 miles per hour, just slightly before I need it to be. The speed limit is now 50. At this point we've got just under a mile to go to an upcoming 15 mile per hour speed limit, and around 1¼ miles to go to our stop. The line that's just joined us on the right is the route from Breydon, so that's the route from Norwich to Great Yarmouth via Breydon. I'm going to apply the brakes for the upcoming 15 limit very shortly as we approach the next signal coming up. I'm not quite sure what's happened to the frame rate just here. That suddenly got very laggy for a moment, but now it's calmed down again. So I'm going to brake for the 15 mile per hour speed limit approaching the next signal. Just made a step 1 brake application as I didn't feel that we needed to brake too quickly here. I'm just looking out now for where the 15 limit starts, because I'm not quite sure where that is, and I really don't want to be down to 15 too early so that we're just cruising along at 15 miles per hour. Okay, the 15 limit comes into force at this curve just here. In fact, I've just noticed it just there, the speed post. I managed to just do a quick full service brake application. I slowed down slightly more than I intended, but because I wasn't exactly certain where the 15 speed post was there for a moment, I ended up braking a little bit harder to ensure we didn't end up breaking the speed limit. I'm now going to coast at 15 miles per hour towards the station, which you can see coming up just ahead. And so here, if you're in a loco haul train, you'd certainly stop in front of the points here so that the loco could pull forward and then reverse and run around the train. But as we're in a unit, I think that you don't have to stop there, and you can actually stop much closer to the buffers. Just accidentally made a step 2 brake application there where I didn't intend to. Seems that the brakes are slightly oversensitive, so I'm just giving us a tiniest bit of power to ensure we don't stop too early. And so I'm going to stop just in front of the buffer stops here at Great Yarmouth. And we should now be stopping in hopefully just about the right place. And so here we are, arrival at Great Yarmouth. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, please don't forget that for the latest channel updates, you can find me on Facebook with the link to my Facebook page in the video description. And if you'd like to sponsor this channel, then please visit my Patreon page for more information. And again, the link to that is in the description of this video. Once again, thank you for watching.